So you think this video is going to piss off the 100 push-up per day people?
No, I actually think this is going to help those people. As a matter of fact, anybody that does push-ups should watch this video.
Okay.
Because I think it's probably one of the most misperformed exercises, but has a lot of potential. All right, so let's talk about 100 push-ups per day. I think the one thing we can all agree on is that when people do 100 push-ups a day, right, they hear the routine, they want to try it. They do it for what reason?
To get a bigger, stronger chest.
Right, and it's interesting because the push-up isn't just a chest exercise, right? It builds triceps, shoulders, but I think everyone thinks of it or starts that because they want to build a bigger chest. Okay, now, you said two things, bigger, stronger.
Yeah.
All right? If they do their 100 push-ups a day, right, it looks like this, again, in an attempt to build that bigger, stronger chest, the first question I would ask you is if we could focus on stronger, is I got another number up here for you.
Okay.
All right? 65 to 75%. Do you know what that is?
My functional brain capacity.
Yes, it is. That's very accurate. For anybody that's worked with Jesse, they'll tell you that. So what this is actually the percent of your body weight that you're lifting during a push-up.
Okay.
Because you're not lifting your entire body weight because half of it's in contact with the ground, right? So let's go to the high end here, all right? 75%.
Okay.
Got another math problem to test and stretch that functional capacity of yours, right?
God.
Brain capacity. If we had a 160-pound person, what would 75% of that body weight be?
Well,
I'll give you a hint. Divide by 4, multiply by 3. Two-step process. Here.
120.
120. There you go. So that means that a 160-pound person, if that resonates with you out there, is doing a 120-pound equivalent of, let's say, a bench press.
Okay.
That's what you're lifting when you're doing a push-up. Now, let me ask you a question. Is there a world, and I'm not trying to be insulting in any way, I'm trying to be totally objective. Is there a world where a 120-pound bench presser would be considered strong?
I mean, probably not.
No. I mean, you might start out, we all started out somewhere. I started out with a bar and then 65 pounds, right? So in some point, it's going to represent a point where you've gotten stronger, but as an absolute level of strength, 120 pounds is not going to be a representative weight as something that's a strong lift.
Very impressive.
Right, no. Now, what if I asked you, well, what if you could do that 20 times? Is that any better?
I mean, a little bit better.
Does it get it more impressive if you could do that 120-pound bench press 40 times?
I would say
50 times.
I would say at that point you should just increase the weight.
Okay, it's a good point, right? Why is it that when we do these push-ups and we have a fixed amount of weight, because that's what our body weighs, is the goal to keep doing more and more repetitions? Because that's the same idea as that if you are doing your bench press and you've worked yourself up to 120 pounds, at some point you decide, yeah, I'm not going for 135 or 185 or 205 or 220. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to stick here and keep increasing the repetitions that I'm doing. It doesn't seem very logical. And it's not something people really do.
You're also not going to get much stronger doing that.
No, you're capping out your strength. You might get better strength endurance, but you're not getting an overall maximal increase in strength because that overload isn't there. You're just adding more and more repetitions. So as a strength builder, this approach is not a good approach. Okay, for most people who are intrigued by this, even if you're a very ranked beginner, the strength benefits are going to be very short-coming. However, now we can start asking about the hypertrophy benefits though, because you can still build muscle without necessarily getting strong, okay, if you have the right level of stimulus. So if we're gonna do these, well, we know we're likely not doing, especially if we're beginners, we're not doing 100 repetitions straight out. We're doing them in sets, okay? So if you're doing sets of them and breaking them up, you have two options anytime you do a set of anything. Are you taking that set to failure or are you stopping short? Okay. Are you going to stop a few reps short, or maybe very many reps short? You're just going to kind of do a few and stay very submaximal and then you kind of get back into it again? Or are you taking each set to failure? Well, here's where an interesting part of this comes in, why the 100 push-ups a day starts to become a problem. If you're going to take your sets to failure, this whole thing falls apart. Because there's no world where the natural lifter who's trying to build muscle should subject a muscle to multiple bouts of failure every single day consecutively without rest.
Yeah, you need recovery because as we know, muscle building occurs, or the most growth occurs during your recovery period when you're not
stimulate lifting. In the gym, you grow outside the gym from that stimulus. So that approach doesn't work. So if you're sitting there right now and you're doing your 100 push-ups a day and you keep taking each one of your sets to failure and then stringing them day after day after day after day, at some point you're going to start to dip down into your body's recovery capabilities and make it impossible to actually come back bigger and stronger from the last session. You're just going to continue to pile on this volume that's not going to allow you to recover.
Junk volume.
Yes. Now, if you did the opposite, here's where something interesting starts to happen. So you're stopping shy of failure. How short of failure can that be before it's even still an effort that counts? Because there is an understanding out there that stopping short of failure is okay if the effort that you put forth is really close to failure, within 1 or 2 repetitions. And that means a true representation of what that is. Not what you thought it was, then you actually could have done 4 or 5 more. Well, there's another part of this that becomes a problem, and that is when we're trying to build muscle, I mentioned this curve over here, there's different energy systems that kick in. When you're talking about those really short rep ranges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so, we have primarily a system called the ATP phosphocreatine system. This is where the benefits of creatine supplementation come in, because it helps to recycle this. But this is for the high effort strength bouts that you're doing in your exercises. Very quickly, if your sets are surpassing 5 or 6 repetitions, you're going to start to move past the benefits of this system for feeding the effort that you're doing.
Right.
So that means that as a strength system, once you're doing more than 5 or 6 or 7 reps in a set of these, you're not really going to be tapping into this or benefiting from this. So as I told you before, only the real ranked beginners who really don't even have an appreciable bench press, where the 120 would be an improvement for them, are going to see any strength benefits from the exercise early on.
Gotcha.
But then it starts to shift into this glycolytic energy system, right? And here it's about those anaerobic exercises that feed off of this. But this is where the sweet spot tends to be in that 8 to 15 rep range or so, 8 to 17 reps even, where you're fueling your body through this energy system, keeping your repetitions in this range, not to exceed, let's say, 30 reps, is where you're going to see benefits of hypertrophy. Okay. Whereas beyond that, when the oxidative system kicks in, these become more endurance type exercises, muscle endurance type exercises.
Right.
Not like I'm going to go run a marathon, but just muscle endurance type exercise, where you're talking about 30 plus, 40, 50 plus repetitions. Well, here's what's really interesting just about this zone right here. The higher within this zone, the more you start to get towards 20, 25, 30 repetitions in a set, the more imperative it is that you actually train to failure.
Okay.
Not the sub-max, 2 in the tank, 3 in the tank, 1 in the tank, not that.
Is that better in this system here?
And here, for strength benefits, you really want to stay submaximal, right? To see your increases in strength, this should be your strength-focused energy system. To do that, you want to actually stay submaximal. Think about your heavy squatting, right? Your heavy deadlifting now. Like, what do you use when you do that? You don't use a max.
No, when I'm doing reps of 5 or 6, I'm using like 405, 410.
Right, but it's like your 8 rep max or so, right? So you're staying submaximal here. That's the best way to program that. But in this range here, you want to make sure that if you're going to fail in those rep ranges, the higher it starts to go, the more you need to actually be able to fail. So what does that mean for this system here? Well, it means that as you start to get better at push-ups, and believe me, it's going to happen very quickly. That exercise is one that once you start to perform them, especially regularly each day, submaximally, neurologically you get better at doing the exercise.
Right.
You get more efficient at doing the exercise. You'll start to go from, I wouldn't be surprised, this is someone who can only do, like, say, 7 in a set in 1 week to be able to do 10 the next week in one set. Fresh, right? And then to be able to do 14. And then again, that drop off will still be there, but it will, you'll start to get to that 100 rep total faster because you're chipping away more quickly in each set, right? Once that happens, you're starting to negate any benefit of this exercise for hypertrophy in its standard form as a regular push-up, because you're starting to get into that range where failure is necessary.
Right.
And if you're not going to failure, that set itself doesn't really provide any stimulus for muscle growth.
It's a wasted set.
And so let's say the alternative is, all right, well then I will start going to failure. Jeff, I'll do 25 reps to failure each time. Well, guess what? You just did what I said not to do. Now you're back on that path where you're going failure, 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 failure each day, and you're kind of screwed. So you can see where this becomes a problem approach that is so short-lived. It's not going to provide the type of benefit that people are looking for, especially for building a bigger chest for any duration of time.
Right.
But there's better things you can do.
Like what?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The thing you can do here is, how could you keep that stimulus in that rep range that would be more tolerant of even a little bit of a submax load? Because we know that if you took a lateral raise and you did a weight that you can only lift 12 times, you did it to 11 grinding reps or even 10 grinding reps, you're still going to get a benefit from that.
Yeah.
You need to bring that rep count down. Well, how do you do that if you can't weight your body any differently?
Well, one, you could weight your body by throwing plates on your back.
Which is interesting because most people don't do that. And by the way, if you took that 120-pound person, right, or the 160-pound person with a 120-pound push-up load,
yeah,
and you were a 225-pound bench presser, and you added 100 pounds of load to your back, it will feel, trust me, very similar to what that bench press feels like, because you have actually equated the load on your body. Remember, your body's not like sitting there going, oh, I know what weights feel like and then my body weight is different. No, your body just understands the tension it's applying to you. But when you look at a push-up and a bench press combined or side by side, they're not the same tension. We equate that by throwing the extra 100 pounds on.
Right.
And not just 60 pounds, because your body weight was 160. We have to take away that percentage that was unweighted. You add the extra 100 pounds, it actually feels the same.
Right.
That would provide a similar overload, yes. But if you didn't have access to additional load, what could you do? What should you do?
Different push-up variations.
Different push-up variations. So what I always tell people is, stop trying to continue just doing the push-up like you've mastered it. At a certain point, you've mastered the count. And unless you're just practicing for, let's say, a military exam, or you're trying to get to a competition that requires, we actually have our own competition that requires X amount of push-ups being done in a certain amount of time, right? They can be used as an objective test. Unless that's the case, then look for a harder version of the push-up that causes the failure in a lower rep range that even if you stayed submaximal in that failure range, could still provide that benefit for hypertrophy because you're getting an effective volume overload over that course of time. So you could go to do these because you're not going all the way to failure. You have a harder variation that causes failure, let's say the 12 rep range that you're doing 10 of. And you do those and you still stay shy of failure and you amount your 100 repetitions of those, well then the 100 repetition idea would work. But it's
more effective.
It would be more effective. I will throw another element in here for the guys that are more experienced to say, yeah, but I just want to do more of these repetitions, right? I just want to accumulate more of the repetitions. There is a limit. Your body has a limit. We all have a limit. How many miles can you get on a set of tires on a car? Do you know?
Oh, I know this one because I just had to have my tires rotated recently. Your tires last 40 to 60,000 miles.
40 to 60,000 miles. Okay, good. How many miles does somebody drive in a year, maybe? What's the least? Like 10,000 miles?
I think it's 10 to 15.
All right, so let's say, for easy math for us, let's say that 10,000 miles a year would give you 4 to 6 years of life on your tires, correct?
Yes.
The human body is also limited in some way, in terms of like, we do have a number of rotations on the tire in our joints, whether they be our wrists, whether they be our elbows, whether they be our shoulders. There is some limit. Thankfully, the human body can regenerate itself, where a set of tires cannot. So we have a lot longer duration. But ideally, all of us would like to live to, let's say, 80 or 90 years old and not have to have anything replaced.
Like my dad.
We don't be replacing our joints if we don't have to. So I do think there should be a respect of, how do I maximize the stimulus that I'm putting on the muscle without exceeding the capacity of the body to recuperate and regenerate at a pace where I start to wear those tires down too quickly and I need to replace them.
Right.
That's the goal. Like, that is your long-term goal of training. So the only way to do that is to increase the stimulus. I mentioned one other thing before, the whole Herschel Walker approach. This is a fact. At some point, when the volume starts to get so high, so excessive, but submaximal, has to be submaximal still, your body does tend to sort of say F you to you, but in a way where it tries to become resilient and build bigger, stronger muscles.
Right.
It's that super high, ridiculous volume approach that actually does tend to make the body almost scar itself over, create like a whole total body callus to that effort, so that it can sort of be more resilient to it in the future and not allow it to break it down every single time. It basically says, you're an idiot, you keep doing the same damn thing to me every day, I have to do something out of desperation at this point to sort of maintain some level or wall of resistance up against what you're doing to me.
Right.
So if you've heard stories about Mike Tyson doing those 1,000+ push-ups a day, or if you've heard stories about Herschel Walker doing those 1,500 push-ups a day, which, by the way, interesting story with Herschel Walker. He said he did only push-ups all the way up till college. The first time they got tested in the weight room on his bench press, you know what he lifted?
No.
345 pounds, 25 times.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so he is clearly one of those one-of-one genetic freaks that was able to do some amazing things that probably also contributed to him being one of the top-level athletes that ever played the game at his position. So you can't consider yourself lucky enough to be Herschel Walker 2.
Yeah.
You're probably likely just Jesse Lako
Yep.
or just Jeff Cavaliere without those genetic gifts. So the whole idea here is that if you're going to do 100 push-ups a day, it will likely be very short-lived. I'm not trying to talk you down from it. If you're a rank beginner and you just want to start like your father encouraged you to do, that might only work for a very small period of time.
Yeah.
If you're someone who has heard this and you're like, I got to get myself back in shape. I have a history of lifting and I want to do something different. Let me try that. I urge you to take the alternative approach. Find a more challenging variation of the push-up. And there's so many of them. There's so many of them. You could have feet elevated positioning. You could have exercise where, again, you add weight to your back, like you said. You could have exercises like an archer push-up where your hands are wider and you have to kind of push yourself laterally through space. There's other ways to do this. You can actually take a band and as you do the push-up, cross it over in front of your body as you go to get some adduction stress to the chest too. There's so many ways to make them more difficult, but here's one of the easiest ways to do it. If you don't have anything that you're aware of or you don't want to try anything different, then at least do this for me. Stop counting the reps that you're doing and make those reps count. That's the only thing you have to remember. And the best way to do that is to slow down your reps. Slow down your reps. Go all the way down to the ground slow. Release your hands from the ground. Ensure that you got all the way down there, right? So you can release your hands, press them back into the ground. As you're pushing up, don't just push up, squeeze yourself up. Try to engage your chest. Almost feel like you're squeezing your hands towards each other while you're doing the push-up. You're gonna say to me, Jeff, that was so damn uncomfortable after 2 reps or 3 reps. That was so uncomfortable. How do you want me to do them like that? Because they're more effective and they're giving you the stimulus that you're after. That alone will take a 40 push-up person and cut them right in half, probably down to 20.
It's funny that you say that also because I've noticed every time that Jeff brings in an athlete, he has them try that version of the push-up, that squeeze up.
Yeah.
And every single time they say, holy crap,
I've never
felt that before.
That's the type of thing that, again, can bring you to your knees and equate that intensity just by changing the tempo that you do the exercise at. So it's not always that you have to look for a different variation. Just the tempo alone could be enough, and the intent alone of trying to really squeeze it can be enough to dramatically increase the intensity of that and take you into a hypertrophy zone.
Right.
But again, it all comes down to that one thing. I don't care about the numbers. So my problem is the 100 part of 100 push-ups a day. That's the counting part. And my other part is the a day portion of the 100 push-ups a day.
Yeah.
And when you look at everything I just told you, for all of those reasons, scientifically this falls apart. And so I'm not trying to shit on the idea for you or, what do they say, piss in your Cheerios. I'm not trying to get you upset about it. I'm trying to give you a reasoning of why it's not going to work, and more importantly, give you an alternative path that will work, because ultimately I said, you said, and we all agree, they were trying to get a bigger chest from doing it. You can get one if you follow it that way. Ultimately, if you want that more strength in your chest, you're really going to have to start incorporating weights at some point, whether it be a barbell or dumbbells, to overload the chest to be able to do that.
Right.
All right, but hopefully, guys, you found this helpful. If you're looking for more videos, guys, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications. And also, we have complete programs where we put the thought and the science behind what we do and the selection of the types of exercises we use in all of our programs. You can find them at ATHLEAN-X.com. All right, guys, good luck. See you soon.